This is WCM's Park Update, a weekly show covering the outdoor hospitality industry, hosted by Ben Quiggle and Mike Gast. During each episode, you'll hear from special guests and campground experts on topics that will help your park flourish. WCM's Park Update is a production of Woodall's Campground magazine.
Hi, I'm Ben Quiggle, editor of Woodall's Campground magazine, and this is another episode of WCM's Park Update. My co-host Mike Gast is here, former vice president of communications at Campgrounds of America. And our guests today are, a lot of people probably recognize them, Sarah Smith, founder of the Dyrt, and Kevin Long, CEO of the Dyrt. And you guys are married, correct? Or
we are married.
Okay. All right. I couldn't remember.
10 years of building the biggest camping platform out there, and we're still married.
Yeah, and you're still married. So that's great.
We've learned over time not to do a Zoom call in the same room, so we have our separate spaces.
Critical.
I thought they were on different parts of the country, maybe, and that's how it worked.
It's funny, these little hacks you learn as married co-founders of like, no, I want some screen time. No, I move over. And then we're like, separate rooms for Zoom calls from now on. And it's
otherwise you'd lose, Kevin. That's just a given.
You're on to me.
And so we want to talk a little bit about the 2023 camping report that the Dyrt released yesterday. But we also want to talk a little bit about, maybe give us kind of an update on how the Dyrt's been going. I know, Sarah, you were just recognized for being a great CEO. So that's awesome. And you guys have been doing a lot of things. It looks like you guys are growing quite a bit. So
yeah, we have been growing. I was on the Inc. 100 female founder list.
Yeah.
Pretty exciting. And Kevin's the great CEO. I leave that all to him. But yeah, just kind of for those of you who might not know about the Dyrt or much about the Dyrt or even why we started the Dyrt. Kevin and I 10 years ago were frustrated campers who couldn't find a place to find consolidated information on camping, whether it was state park, national forest, glamping, cabins, whatever. We couldn't find a place to find this information. So, we started the Dyrt to help us as campers. And now we're the number one camping platform out there with both our website and our app. And we're really excited to have built a place for campers to come together to figure out where to go camping, and now to open up that platform to campground owners as a place where they can get in front of the 30 million visits that we have to our website. So, selfishly solved a problem for ourselves. And then it became much bigger than we had ever hoped.
Yeah. And you guys have been, how many years have you guys done the camping report? You did one last year, right? Or is this the first edition?
This is the third year of doing it.
Third year. Okay. You guys have been able to compile some great data too, because I know you guys have done other like smaller reports or other types of reports as well. And you just harvest that from your campers that use the app and the park owners that use the service, right?
Yeah, we have, like Sarah mentioned, we have 30 million people that visit the Dyrt each year, and we have thousands of bookable properties on the Dyrt. And so what we did is we survey out our audience. So we did, for this report this last year, we surveyed over 3,000 participants from the Dyrt, and then private campground owners across the whole country. So we got both the camper perspective and the campground owner perspective, and then we put it into one consolidated report, which is super interesting going into the third year of doing this, because it's a lot of work and a lot of effort, but it's so interesting to see these trends year over year over year. So we're really happy to be sharing it with Woodall's.
I have a question. I noted that you said you had talked with a campground owner from all 50 states. So Mike just came from Hawaii, and I wanted to know is there a campground in Hawaii? Like, did you talk to somebody from Hawaii?
I don't know exactly which states we covered, but we surveyed from all different states.
No, all states, and Hawaii was one of them. Yeah.
Huh. Okay. Well, I'm gonna have to do some better searching. So
yeah, there. I don't think there's any commercial campgrounds in Hawaii like we would typically think of them on the mainland. But there are some folks that run smaller type, 2 or 3 spots in their yard type operations out there.
yeah.
Well, we see a lot of bookings coming from Hawaii on the Dyrt platform. And, if you want to check out some more camping in Hawaii, Ben, because I know you're going to seek out that nice 70-degree weather. I think there's a really great platform you can go to do that. It might be called thedyrt.com.
Oh, okay. I was just curious. I was just curious because we've done some things in tropical locations, and I've tried to look for Hawaii, some things to do in Hawaii, and it's been very difficult, but I'll have to keep looking. So,
well, I lived there for 2.5 years, and I think I counted, I saw 4 RVs in the time I was there. So it's kind of hard to float them over there. And so it's more of a tent camping mecca than it is for it. And there are a lot of county parks over there that do a really nice job of taking care of people. So, and again, there's all sorts of private individuals over there doing it in a less commercial way.
Right.
So I was involved with Campgrounds America's camping report for about 6 years. So I know what you've gone through, to get this report out. It is a ton of work and a ton of stuff to go through. Did you come away pretty satisfied that you have a real scientific slice? What steps did you take to make sure that you had a good scientifically valid study?
Yeah, so we have data scientists on staff, which is important. And then we also worked with external surveying companies as well. And then doing multiple surveys with our own community, and then also doing surveys with the general public. And then a really important thing is having a big sample size, right? So having 3,000 users give their answers is really important to have that statistical significance. So as you know, Mike, not easy lining that thing up, and you can't just crank them out, right? Like it takes so many processes and revisions and edits to make sure before you start doing those big blasts to get the data in right. So we're really happy with where it's turned out.
There's a couple of really interesting findings that I noticed on your top line that really caught my attention. And one of them was that, no big surprise, I guess, that people are having trouble finding sites. And but the extent of what you found, that people are finding that sites are so scarce they just can't. They're twice as scarce this in 2022 as they were the year before. That's quite a leap. That all of a sudden the inventory just isn't there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, our report found, sorry, were you gonna say something, Sarah?
Well, I was just going to say that our report found it was actually 5 times harder to find a campsite in 2022 than in 2019. So, a little bit harder than last year, a lot harder than the year before. So yeah, it's definitely something that we're hearing a lot of from our community.
Yeah, and we thought, we were like, oh man, what if we're just hitting this COVID boom, right? And all these millions of campers went camping. Well, another 7.2 first time ever campers went camping last year. So it's not slowing down, right? Like this community continues to grow, and they're getting savvier about like where to find places to go camp, and they're getting out there. So we're just seeing camping as a continual growth community.
So I didn't see this in your report, but maybe I'm sure you've got it in your data. Are you concerned about the camper churn, about long timers giving it up, and maybe people giving it a try and deciding it's too hard and backing off?
We see what we're seeing is that when people buy the equipment, right? The RVers, like look at what happened with RV sales in the last few years. Same thing with like tent sales and equipment. The hardest threshold to get over is that first time camping, right? So where I think you might have some turnover is people that go and do a one-time glamping experience and maybe not come back. But what we're also seeing is massive equipment purchasing, and the signs for us is showing that that's the hardest hurdle to get over, to make it easier to go the second, third, fourth, 10th time camping. And so we just see a whole new flood of campers coming in.
I noticed in the, back to the availability on the campsites, I guess I noticed from 2021 to 2022, there was like a 28% jump in people having issues finding campsites. Was there like specific regions or anything that you guys were able to find where it was really hard, or is it just pretty much all across the board? Is it different types of resorts that are harder to book?
So we found it across the board, across the nation. Given we all know the busiest time of the year to go camping, now not strictly across America, but a busy time of the year is the, July through August window, right?
Yeah.
That's where you have, the weather playing in favor in a lot of areas in the United States. You have a lot of families out of school. That's definitely the tougher time. There's still times in the winter where, Sarah and I went and did some camping road trips, work from the road during freezing cold winter, or during a little bit of off-season shoulder season. Not as hard to get a spot. It's not impossible to find a spot. That's not what we're saying. But what we're saying is overall, when we survey, we put the finger on the pulse of the 30 million visits we get to the Dyrt community each year. And what they're saying is, in 2021, it was 2 times harder. And by 2022, it was 5 times harder to find an available campsite. And that's nationwide.
And Ben, if I could just jump in here a little bit, it is hard across the board, but it is harder on the West Coast. That's what we found. And specifically states like Colorado, Montana, California, harder there to find available places to camp. And I think the states that have the big national parks, also, it tends to be harder at those places.
I noticed like 35% said that advanced bookings are full. So those are people trying to book advanced bookings that maybe didn't get there quick enough. I know people are booking like really early now, especially for some of those hot destinations. And then I noticed 19% said they're not sure where to camp. So I guess there's kind of an information gap there, or they just don't know what they're doing, or they've never camped before, I guess.
Well, when you have millions of people coming on every single year, it's a new experience, right? For everybody on this call, finding a campground is a very, very doable thing, right? We know what camper we are, we know what our experiences are. For the first time camper, or someone that hasn't camped in 3 years or 5 years, they had a family and now they're like, hey, I want to get the family outdoors. It's kind of dusting it off, right? And starting over again. So even with the Dyrt platform having 8 million user submitted pictures, videos, and reviews of campgrounds, more than anybody else out there, you can see what you're getting, which is really important. It's still tricky, right? And what we really try to do is bring that technology piece so we can just get all different types of campers one step closer to being able to get out there and go have that experience.
One of your findings that I thought probably didn't bode well for campers was that managers were reporting that about 49% of them raised their rates last year, and another 47% are planning on raising them in 2023, while only 36% are going to add sites. So that just means more costly and probably a little bit tougher to find one.
It is true. It's still a lot cheaper than taking a family and getting a couple hotel rooms, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, look at some of these historical prices. Like some of these campground owners that did raise their rates, we found haven't raised them in years, right?
Yeah.
And what we're seeing, and Ben, you and I were at the RVIC show this year. That is a show that I go to get my finger on the pulse of like what's happening with campground owners, and watching the difference in the crowd coming through year after year after year, and just noticing a lot of new campers. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but like a lot of new campground owners coming into the fold, buying existing campgrounds, getting their campground started, and increasing their tech savviness. And with a lot of that, it's campground owners understanding the importance of distributing their properties out, using booking software that distributes out to multiple distribution platforms like the Dyrt to get in front of bigger audiences and get more bookings. When you do that, you fill your occupancy, and you then have the ability to raise your rates, right? So yeah, it'll be a little bit more expensive for campers, but in the end, camping is still one of the most affordable vacations you can do.
You think that the current climate adds to the influx of boondocking and more hip camps and harvest host type organizations and organizations like yours? Are we going to see more of this?
More of, what do you mean?
like platforms that,
Yeah, just more people kind of going non-traditional and doing a hip camper, doing more boondocking, just flat out going out to the woods because they can't find what they want.
Yeah, so I think that overall everything's getting more accessible. I don't know if it necessarily means that they just won't hit a campground, right? I think a lot of people like state parks and national parks, like it's like a cornerstone of our country with camping. So it's so hard to have that the difference. So I think we're still just going to keep seeing that. And we're seeing a variety of things. I know a lot of my friends who will never do dispersed camping, right? They don't have the equipment, they're not set up for it, they don't like it. It's too hard to deal with it with their family. I know other of my friends who that's all they want to do is dispersed camping.
The mantra for the last few years too has been book well in advance. Everybody says you got to get out there, you got to get out there. And you had some stats that showed that, almost 9% of folks are booking a year ahead now, and 61% are booking 3 months out. And yet 50% said at least for one trip, they waited within a week to go out there and find some things. Is that something you're seeing in your numbers? Is that increasing? Is that a trend?
In the trends in people booking in advance.
People booking earlier.
Oh yeah. So there's a couple things that we're doing to support our community with that. So one, on the Dyrt.com right now, anyone that upgrades to a pro membership gets a campground availability report. And what we've done is we pulled together a report of all the national parks, all the state parks, of when they open up their reservation windows. Because when they open up their reservation windows, if you want to hit a national park or state park, it's a good idea to be ready. Some of them open up 6 months before, some of them 3 months before. It changes state to state, area to area. So we put that information out to help our campers plan in advance, get those reservations. Another thing that we're launching at the Dyrt, and this is a little bit of a sneak peek, we're excited about it. It's the Dyrt alerts. So what campers are going to be able to do is get reservations at sold out campgrounds. They're going to be able to pick the state park that they want to go to or national park, say, I want to go during these dates. And what we will do is watch for cancellations that happen at those sold out campgrounds. And as soon as it opens up, we send the user, the pro user from the Dyrt, a text message. Hey, that state park just opened up. Someone just canceled. Go grab the reservation. Hey, that national park just had an opening. Go grab the reservation. So what we want to do is help that community get those bookings either by planning early in advance or grabbing those cancellations, because there's a lot of these sites. Go drive around state parks and national parks. They're all full when they're online, but you go drive around and they're like 70% occupied, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And part of that is because the reservations, frankly, compared to hotels, just aren't that expensive, right? So people will let them just slip through. So what we're trying to do is help fill that gap when those cancellations end. Let our community members know, hey, there's an opening here, go grab it. But the long and the short of it, it's almost like anything. You want to book your airline tickets in advance, your hotel tickets in advance. Anything you do earlier in advance, you're going to have a better shot at. So we always encourage people to try to do that in advance.
I need to plan better because I'm one of those 2 day before people. So I just spur of the moment. So it doesn't work out for me a lot, especially when I want to go camp at like really popular sites. Yeah. So I think it is it is interesting on the national and state park thing. I know a few years ago, and I think this was pre-COVID, we used to talk about the fact that people would reserve a bunch of different sites and then only show up at one. So when you drive by those parks and you see like 75% full, you wonder if that's going on too. I don't know if the national or state parks have kind of started penalizing that more. I know that was the talk. I haven't heard anything here recently, but
I haven't heard anything recently. And honestly, I think it's a really hard problem to solve.
Yeah.
Right? What's the most realistic way to solve it? You increase the price to a point where someone's not going to want to do that. But then you got to look at the far side. It's like, this is public land and we want to make this accessible to everybody. So you can't go crazy with the price. It's a real conundrum for the government sites how to deal with that. The best solution, I think, is the Dyrt Alerts feature that we're launching with Pro is, hey, someone cancels those sites. We got a waiting list ready to go. We text out those users Dyrt Alert that a campground opened up, go grab it. Right. And
Yeah.
let's use technology to go make sure that those places get filled, because we can solve that.
I think what's frustrating for some campers is that they just don't cancel them.
Exactly.
So they keep them and they don't cancel them and they just don't show up. And so that
Right.
like your service, I mean, it's great, but yeah, it wouldn't impact those sites because they just never canceled them. And I don't know when the national park decides to cancel them when they don't show up. So, but
Yeah.
at any rate, we have to take a break for our sponsor. We'll be right back in a few seconds. Thanks. WCM's Park Update is being brought to you by Woodall's Campground Magazine. For over 5 decades, Woodall's Campground Magazine has aimed to provide park owners and operators with the relevant industry news they need to run their businesses more efficiently. As times have changed, so has Woodall's Campground Magazine. Besides just its print publication, which is distributed to more than 14,000 industry professionals every month, the magazine also reaches readers through its various social media platforms, including Facebook at Woodall CM, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Woodall's Campground Magazine also offers a daily e-blast which highlights the top news from the industry. The best part, everything we do is advertiser supported and free to our readers. As the outdoor hospitality industry continues to grow at a rapid pace, it is important to stay up to date on trends and other relevant news. Subscribe to Woodall's Campground Magazine at woodallscm.com. Hi, welcome back to WCM's Park Update with our guests Kevin Long and Sarah Smith from the Dyrt, and we've been talking about their recently released 2023 camping report. And Mike, I know earlier in the show you mentioned the rates increases and how that impacts campers. I think, Kevin, when we were at the Arvik show in Orlando, it was amazing talking with the park owners because they're all doing improvements. And I think some of the rate increases are really helping them improve sites. Maybe they don't add sites every year, but I know a lot of park owners are adding sites and they're adding amenities and they're adding a ton of different things at their parks. Is that something you hear at the Dyrt, I guess? Do you see that at the Dyrt?
Yeah, and we saw that in our report, in the Dyrt's annual 2023 report, that nearly 20% of camping properties expanded their calendar. So that's one thing they're doing, is saying, hey, let's not close down for 4 months a year. Let's close down for 3 months of the year, right? Yeah. Sort of extending that, because we're seeing on the camper side, the biggest seasonal increase in camping is coming from winter camping, actually. And I think it has a lot to do with the large amount of campers that have vehicles nowadays. But on the campground side, the Dyrt 2023 annual report showed that a third of campgrounds added additional campsites in 2022, right? A third, right? That's pretty big.
If I can jump in and say that, like, almost half of those properties added glamping sites. So like 44% that added new camping added glamping sites. So I guess I need a definition here. So what do you guys, when you're looking at glamping sites, are you counting park models or are you counting cabins, or what's a glamping site for you? I guess.
So when we look at the Dyrt, when we look at camping on the Dyrt, we look at camping everything from the backcountry hiking camper all the way up to a cabin, right? Sometimes people, I tell them about the Dyrt and we run the Dyrt and they're like, oh yeah, and they're like embarrassed to tell me that they're a cabin goer, right? And I'm just like, that's camping, right? That's how we look at it. Like, what do we want? We want people to go outside, have these experiences, lower their stress, reconnect with themselves, reconnect with people that they love. And if it takes, you got to be in a comfortable cabin and a bed, because that's just your deal. Great. And then everything in between there. So we look at tent, RV, glamping tents, yurts, regular traditional RV parks, all the way to private land and camping.
So but glamping is for us like canvas tent, a yurt, a cabin, an Airstream that you rent, not your own Airstream, like a tiny house. That's how we define glamping.
It's great to have that net growth, I guess, if people are actually adding sites to their campground. But at least early on, in my experience, a lot of that glamping expansion was into existing RV sites or existing tent sites. So it kind of stole from one to give to the other because the ground just became more lucrative to the owner that way. But it really didn't expand the net RV sites, for instance. If they probably took their 5 least productive RV sites and turned them into glamping sites. And so there really wasn't a net gain for a while. Do you see that more people are going into empty land and expanding more, adding sites that way?
Yeah, that's specifically what the stat is about. It's that people who added a new type of camping added glamping.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, and same thing when I have conversations even with campground owners at Arvik, like a lot of them talk about like, hey, we're adding on 20 sites this year, and then we're planning on doing another 20 sites then the following year. And when we see it, I feel like I've seen, I mean, Michael, I feel like you would have a better finger on the pulse with this, but like, I feel like the conversations I've had too with campground owners, I feel like a big mix of like, we're just adding, 20 more flat electric RV sites. And I've talked to other owners of like, we're adding 10 small cabin homes, each with a hot tub, each with, I just see such a variety out there of what people are doing. But the thing I am hearing across the board, and we're seeing it with our stat of campground owners are expanding their season and they're expanding the amount of properties, and the report showing that 44% of properties that added new types of camping added glamping.
Even
I think there's some fear in the RV side of the equation, both in the camper and the manufacturer, is that those new sites just aren't keeping up with the amount of new RVers that are going out there, and it's just becoming more and more. They're going after less and less sites right now. The numbers is just overwhelming on the RV manufacturing and new owner side.
Right, for specifically like big Class A RVers to find a spot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think, WCM had an article a few weeks ago where Jeff Kreider, one of our writers, had surveyed a ton of different developments. He estimated there was like 11,000 new sites coming in here within the next few years. And there's probably a ton more than that because he interviewed like a small segment of the developers that are building parks. So in KOA. So, I think it's just, they're trying to keep up. They're trying to build new sites. I know there's a lot of different legal and like government challenges that some of these developers face, but there just have been a surge of RVers that I don't think anybody anticipated before COVID. So it's amazing how many people are going out camping. So
yeah, that is interesting. And you guys have seen it too. Like it goes in these cycles, right?
Yeah.
Like 5 years. And I kind of feel like, I think you're right. Like, and our stats are showing it that a lot of the properties that are owning 44% that are adding sites are adding glamping specifically. But where's that coming from, right? And it's coming from 4 years ago. It's like, hey, these glamping sites are cool. Hey, we can put up a safari tent. Hey, let's add one small tiny cabin onto our property, and then we can distribute to more platforms. And that idea started 4 years ago, and it's like you're now seeing it come through. Now I'm hearing you guys, right? You're talking about like, yeah, massive quantities of RV purchases just happened. RVers are hitting the road. I could see it coming swinging back now. Like, hey, let's get more RV spots going, right? And it goes in these cycles.
Yeah, and I think for RVers, it's probably frustrating when they see parks adding glamping sites when they want them to add RV sites. So not to say some RVers don't glamp too, but I know there's a lot of traveling RVers out there right now that could use the sites. So I thought part of your report that was interesting was that you mentioned camping alone is up 28%, which I never camp alone because I watched too many horror movies when I was a kid. That's never going to happen.
You were the first one to go, Ben.
Yeah,
you were the guy in the red
the
shirt. You were gone.
And then, there's still a strong number of people that are working remotely, even though offices have started telling people they need to come back. There's still a strong number of people that work remotely. So that's great to see. And I know we've seen traveling nurses, more traveling construction workers. Campgrounds are aiming to hit those segments as well. So
a really weird little data point you had in that camping alone stat where LGBTQ was up 51% for that camping alone area. That really seemed odd to me, but I guess that's probably where it starts. That's where that demographic starts camping, and to be out there alone seemed like and again, mostly younger, mostly tent campers. It seemed like a very unusual stat.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and we're super excited to see, the diversity happening in the outdoor space, and the fact that more and more people are getting out camping who maybe didn't feel comfortable in the past for whatever reason. So, we're super excited to be a platform where people can help facilitate that. Going back to the camping alone and the working camping, it's interesting for me, like as a female, I had never camped alone before.
Yeah.
Because I was in a tent, and I still to this day don't think I would go camping in a tent by myself or want to work from a tent. But, as we've changed as campers, we've gone from being tent campers to trailer campers, and now we have a van. And the experience of traveling alone and working is much different depending on what kind of camping you're doing, So I think it's interesting too that I think a lot more people are camping in vehicles than ever before. And I think that opens things up to this.
Yeah, and remember, camping alone doesn't have to be a Ben running through the woods and dispersed camping in a horror movie, right? It's like I'm going to go to a state park or a national park, right? And I'm going to be around a community of other great campers and hundreds of other people in this area. But I have a flexibility to work remotely. I have time and space to do that. And, we're also coming off of, just look at like the top performing stocks in the market, right? It's like travel, right? And it's the same thing that's happening to people of, we have this pent up demand of like, I just want to get out. And it's not that big a deal for me to just go camping by myself. So I think some of it even just comes from that.
And I really loved the income portion. I think it was near the back of the report where you talked a little bit about the camper income, some of the age demographics. And you mentioned that, campers who reported a household income of under 50,000 are more likely to become avid campers. And then your higher income campers, the 101,000 to 250,000, they reported the most difficulty finding a site. I imagine a lot of those probably have those larger class A's, so they may be having a rough time parking the humongous rigs that they make now. And some of the larger like fifth wheels and travel trailers are hard to park too at times. But I thought it was kind of interesting with the way we're seeing the development market with more resort type camping, destinations and things like that. Just, trying to remember that, under 50,000, they're looking for maybe a more basic camping experience too. So, they're looking for the cheaper, more cost-effective vacations. Yeah. So just keeping that in mind, I guess, as we develop campsites. So.
Yeah. I mean, in looking at this trends of like people becoming more independent, people want to get out there, people just want the nature time. It's like when we surveyed people of camping alone, do you camp alone? And the stat that we were talking about earlier, the LGBT, 51% of LGBT community members were more likely to camp alone than the average camper, right? Which is just, it's showing this like, I'm interested to go out camping. I'm interested to have time with myself. I'm not worried about having some time by myself. And we're seeing that across all different segments.
What's interesting was the campers who reported an income under 50,000 had 11 plus trips in 2022. So those are like your consistent campers. I imagine they must have like a campground like near them that they just go to on the weekends all the time. So that's definitely interesting. Because I know in other reports we've been reading about the income levels were a little bit higher and kind of focusing on the middle income groups there. So it was kind of interesting to see.
So guys, I know KOA just put out their press release today that said they had a record year last year in their 60-year history. And they've added in my 20 years at KOA, I don't remember them building a campground from scratch. And now that they've got 500 development.
Yeah.
What in your data would be the big takeaway for any park owner or RV manufacturer? What should they focus in on and use as the main takeaway from your report?
The main takeaway from our report is that the pandemic growth of campers, it wasn't a blip, right? Because now we have multiple year survey on that.
Yeah.
Like the camping community is making a move, and campsites, people are having a hard time booking. So campground owners are in a place right now where they have an opportunity to, number one, raise their rates, and number two, build more sites and increase their shoulder season. So if I was going to give any thoughts for campground owners, what to be thinking about from this report, you can have the Dyrt 2023 report, check it out, download it. It should give you confidence to do those things, raise your price, get more distribution of your bookable properties, and increase your shoulder season, because the camping community, it's growing and it's not going to slow down.
And use platforms like ours to get in front of the campers, during those shoulder seasons, weekdays, the times you need to fill. You can come on the Dyrt, you can claim your listing. We have a whole, not to, plug us, but we have a team who's ready to help you get your listing on the Dyrt. And we don't charge campgrounds to list on the Dyrt or do bookings on the Dyrt. So
what? It's free? We don't charge campgrounds? So
you missed the meeting.
I missed the memo on that.
So here's a real subjective question for you. Is with all the pressures that go into running a campground now, are campground owners that you talk to, are they having as much fun as they used to? Is it still a fun thing to do, own a campground?
I have a thought on that. What do you think, Sarah?
Well, I just want to say, I think for me, I've just been meeting so many new campground owners, and they seem so, and this is maybe just my perception, right? But they seem excited. They seem really excited to be in this game. So I think there's so many new campground owners coming through, and maybe people who are kind of tired of it and ready to be done are starting to kind of head out.
I mean, what was interesting with our survey is that we found that the average campground owner owns their campgrounds somewhere between 2 to 5 years, right? So you're looking at half a decade ownership, and then the campground gets sold off on average, right? Of course, you have some of the family campgrounds that have been around for decades and they'll continue to be there, and those are awesome. But think about that. Every let's take the average of just that stat, every 3.5 years or 4 years, a campground's turning over, and it makes sense. When I think back to the National RVIC conference 4 years ago versus this last year, whoa, different audience. Mm-hmm. Just like Sarah's saying, new campground owners coming in. Kids are now older, right? And they're owning these campgrounds and they're taking them over for their family if they're keeping them in the family. And you're seeing this revamp of energy. And the other thing that I'm really seeing is that the technology perspective is on a completely next level, right?
Well, it's been amazing on the technology side, because I think even before COVID, I mean, we're talking 3 years ago, just when people were looking at Wi-Fi and technology, you would still hear a lot of campground owners come up and say, well, they're here to disconnect. I'm not going to worry about that because they're here to disconnect. And now with the COVID thing, you don't hear that really anymore. People are really investing in that technology. So
and they're thinking about it, right? They're thinking about we're not in the booking software company, right? Yeah. We're not in that world, but it's really interesting to see. It used to just be people would pick their booking software on which one is quote unquote free. Now they're picking it of well, which booking software can I push my inventory out to Airbnb and bookings.com and the Dyrt? I want to get in front of hundreds of millions of new people to be able to get more bookings. I didn't see that happening 4 years ago. That's now becoming a staple in today's world. So just savvy technology is getting put into the campgrounds. Kind of what happened in the hotel industry 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. That's probably the biggest change I've seen. And it's really fun to see it, right? The perspective coming through with the technology.
And it's been amazing how just the employee situation too, with the employee shortages, how park owners have worked with those reservation and property management systems to kind of, create these systems to where they don't have to do a lot of things because of the employee shortage. And then we're seeing the parks that don't have any human beings in them at all, the automated parks. I think there's like 3 or 4 of them that I know of now. And so that's been really interesting to see develop just kind of out of this COVID experience that we all had. So
the other thing we're seeing is campground owners will come on and they won't even call us at the Dyrt. They'll just go on to the dyrt.com/claim and they'll list their campground and they'll hook up their bookings and they'll hook up their bank accounts and hook up their availability and hook up all the pictures and they'll figure it out. And they just go live, and now, I mean, 2 years ago, we were doing everything for every campground. And now the savvy campground owners are coming on and like, they're just going out to all the platforms, including the dyrt.com, and getting their site listed, getting more visibility, getting more bookings.
Yeah, and I think that's just from education at places like Arvik and some of those conferences, and obviously some of your competitors are out there talking about it too. So I think they're just used to listing more now. So there's a ton of sites to list on. So but it was great talking with you, Sarah and Kevin. I look forward to seeing you at shows maybe this year. I don't know if you go to any state association shows, but maybe at the national conventions in the fall. So
that'd be awesome. Thank you so much, both Ben and Mike, for having us on. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for coming.
Yeah. And everyone have a great rest of the week, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you for listening to WCM's Park Update, a production of Woodall's Campground magazine. Join us for a new show each Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern on Facebook, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn for daily news and updates, and subscribe to our news feed on our website at woodallscm.com. Show hosts are Ben Quiggle and Mike Gast. Executive producers Rick Kessler and Alex Burkett. Copyright 2022, G&G Media Group.